The following account was taken from real testimonies. Names and details have been altered for privacy. I still don't know how two adults, two backpacks, and a printed itinerary could end up on the wrong ferry. But maybe that's how the best stories start, with a mistake you only notice when the sea is already pulling you away from where you thought you were going. It was late afternoon in Piraeus, the kind of chaotic, sun-bleached port that feels like it exists halfway between order and beautiful disaster. Tourists yelling, seagulls fighting over fries, ferry horns echoing like foghorns from ancient times. And us, two tired travelers who thought we knew where we were going. The plan was simple: Naxos, 3 nights. Quiet beaches, sleep, exactly the opposite of Athens noise. We found the ferry gate, at least, we thought we did. A man in an orange vest waved us forward. Bored, quickly full. He didn't look at our tickets. We didn't question it. And before we knew it, we were climbing the ramp, the metal vibrating under our feet, salt smell mixing with diesel. We found seats on the open deck, bags at our feet, wind whipping our hair. The ferry pulled away from the port with the ease of something that had done this 1,000 times. For the first hour, everything felt right. The sun dipped low, the water turning that impossible blue that only Greece seems to understand. Then the first doubt arrived, not in my mind. In the form of a sign painted on the inside of the ferry wall. I frowned. Karpathos, that wasn't anywhere near Naxos. Not even close, my friend laughed. No, it's probably just an old sign. They reuse ferries, relax. But 20 minutes later, a woman with a thick German accent approached us, smiling politely. Do you know how long until we reach Karpathos? My stomach dropped. I looked at my friend, he looked at me. We both looked at the sea, now wide, endless, and very much going the wrong direction. He said, we're not going to Karpathos. The woman blinked. Oh, but this ferry is. And just like that, everything inside me went quiet. The chaotic kind of quiet. The one where your brain tries to process panic by slowing down time. I pulled out my ticket, looked at the gate number again. We had boarded from gate E7, our ticket said E5. 2 numbers, 1 small mistake, a completely wrong island. I stood up, went to find a crew member. The man I found was leaning against the rail, smoking as if he had been born doing it. He didn't seem even remotely surprised when I showed him my ticket. He exhaled a long stream of smoke. Oh, yes, he said calmly. You are on wrong boat. My heart lurched. And what do we do now? He shrugged. You arrive in Karpathos. When? I asked. He took another drag. 6 hours. 6 hours. To the wrong island. I went back to my seat, sat down slowly, like my body had forgotten how chairs worked. My friend whispered, we're idiots. I nodded, staring at the horizon, but then something strange happened. Something I still think about now, months later, as the sun set over the Aegean, casting the water in gold and purple. A sense of peace washed over me, like maybe the mistake wasn't a mistake. Sometimes the road chooses for you, and sometimes the sea does. On that deck, surrounded by strangers going somewhere we never intended to go, the story began to shift. From panic, to curiosity, to something like fate, because what happened next, who we met, what we learned, what that island showed us, only happened because we boarded the wrong ferry at the right moment. The sun disappeared completely as our ferry pushed deeper into open water. The air turned cooler, the wind sharper, and the deck lights flickered on. Weak yellow bulbs that made everyone look a little more tired and a little more real. By then, most passengers had gone inside to escape the wind, but I stayed out. Something about the open deck felt safer than sitting in a bright room pretending everything was fine. My friend joined me with 2 cups of bitter ferry coffee. He handed me one. Okay, he said, blowing on his. Let's brainstorm. We get there. We find a cheap hotel. We come back tomorrow. Before he could finish, a voice behind us said, You won't make it back tomorrow. We both turned. A woman sat 2 rows behind us. Thin, blonde hair tied loosely, sunburn on her cheeks, boots dusty as if she'd been traveling for weeks. She wasn't looking at us, just staring at the horizon. My friend frowned. Why not? She took a sip from a metal water bottle, then said, Karpathos has only one morning ferry back to the Cyclades, and it's full. They canceled tomorrow's sailing because of the wines. The wines, I looked up. The sky was clear, stars forming slowly. No storm. How do you know? I asked. She finally turned her head toward us. Her eyes were pale blue, the kind that look almost silver in certain light. I live on the ferries, she said simply, island to island, have for years. I check schedules like most people check weather. My friend and I exchanged a look, a mix of exhaustion and a kind of defeated laughter. So, I said, we're stuck, she nodded once. For at least 2 days, my friend groaned into his coffee. I leaned back against the seat, watching the dark sea roll past. Strangely, I didn't feel panic anymore, just acceptance, and something else. A quiet curiosity about this woman who spoke like she belonged to the ocean. What's your name? I asked. She smiled faintly. Helena. The name fit her, soft, older than it sounded, shaped by the wind. And you? She asked. We told her. She nodded once, then said, Karpathos will treat you well. But it's not a place people end up by accident. The words hit me harder than I expected. What do you mean? Helena looked back at the sea, her hair whipping around her face. Some islands are destinations, she said. And some islands are crossroads. Before I could ask what that meant, the ferry horn sounded, low, long, echoing across the water. We turned. Lights appeared in the distance. A scattered chain of them climbing a hill, shining softly like someone had draped a necklace across the island. That's Karpathos, Helena said, standing up to grab her bag. Don't worry, everything you lose in Greece comes back to you eventually. Just maybe not in the way you expect. She headed inside, leaving us in a silence full of questions. My friend exhaled slowly. Well, he said, this should be interesting. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because Helena's last words were still turning in my mind. The idea that some places pull you in, even when you're trying to go somewhere else. And as the island grew closer, the wind changed. Warmer now, gentler, as if welcoming us. We had no reservation, no plan, no idea where we would sleep. We had boarded the wrong ferry. We're headed to the wrong island, on the wrong night. But as the lights of Karpathos reflected across the waves, something inside me shifted. It didn't feel wrong anymore. It felt strangely, impossibly right. The sun disappeared completely as our ferry pushed deeper into open water. The air turned cooler, the wind sharper, and the deck lights flickered on. Weak yellow bulbs that made everyone look a little more tired and a little more real. By then, most passengers had gone inside to escape the wind, but I stayed out. Something about the open deck felt safer than sitting in a bright room pretending everything was fine. My friend joined me with 2 cups of bitter Ferry coffee. He handed me one. Okay, he said, blowing on his. Let's brainstorm. We get there. We find a cheap hotel. We come back tomorrow. Before he could finish, a voice behind us said, You won't make it back tomorrow. We both turned. A woman sat 2 rows behind us. Thin, blonde hair tied loosely, sunburn on her cheeks, dusty boots like she had been traveling for weeks. She wasn't looking at us, just staring at the horizon. My friend frowned. Why not? She took a sip from a metal water bottle, then said, Karpathos has only one morning ferry back to the Cyclades, and it's full. They canceled tomorrow's sailing because of the wines. My stomach dropped. How do you know? I asked. She finally turned her head toward us. Her eyes were pale blue, the kind that look almost silver in certain light. I live on the ferries, she said simply, island to island, have for years. I check schedules like most people check weather. So, I said, we're stuck, she nodded once, for at least 2 days. As the island grew closer, the wind changed. Warmer now, gentler, almost welcoming. We had no reservation, no plan, no idea where to sleep. But as the lights of Karpathos reflected across the waves, something inside me shifted. It didn't feel wrong anymore. It felt strangely, impossibly right, as if we were meant to be there. We followed Sophia up the narrow path that twisted through the small village above the port. By the time we reached her guest house, the sky was almost black, sprinkled with the kind of stars you only see on islands. Bright, close, unbothered by city light. Sophia unlocked the door and gestured inside. It's simple, she said. But it's safe, and quiet. You need quiet. I didn't realize how tired I was until I walked in. The room was small but warm. Whitewashed walls, wooden beams, a tiny balcony overlooking the water. A fan hummed softly overhead, but one detail froze me in place. 2 towels were laid on the bed, one yellow, one blue. My color, my friend's color, exactly. I tried to laugh it off, but something about it stuck in my throat. How would she know this? My friend whispered. Sophia stood at the doorway, watching us with a strange kindness. Helena said you'd understand, she said. Not today, but later. And she closed the door. My friend ran a hand through his hair. Okay, this is kind of freaking me out. I sat on the bed, touching the yellow towel again. It felt unreal. Like the island had been expecting us long before we boarded the wrong ferry. Outside, waves lapped softly against the rocks. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. The whole island felt alive. But not in a loud way. More like it was listening. My friend looked at me. So what now? I took a slow breath. Now, I said. I think we find out why we were meant to come here, because deep down, we both felt it. Even if we couldn't explain it yet, this island had a reason. And the reason hadn't revealed itself. Not yet. I woke before sunrise, not because of noise. Not because of light, but because of a feeling. A gentle tug in my chest. As if something outside the room was calling me awake. The air was cool. The sky still dark, with a thin line of pink stretching over the horizon. My friend was asleep, sprawled across the bed like someone who hadn't taken a deep breath in years. I stepped onto the tiny balcony. The village was quiet. Shuttered windows, still trees, rooftops touched by the first hints of morning. Far below, the sea was calm, a sheet of dark blue glass that reflected the slow birth of light. For a moment, I forgot about the wrong ferry. The strange connections, the towels. The island's quiet way of knowing things it shouldn't. It was just peaceful. Deeply, impossibly peaceful. Then I saw her, Helena, standing alone at the end of the narrow road that led down to the harbor. Same sunburned cheeks, same silver blue eyes, same calm stillness. She wasn't looking at me, not directly. But she was facing the guest house. Hands in her pockets, as if waiting, or checking, or acknowledging something. A chill crawled up my arms, though the morning air wasn't cold. I leaned over the balcony rail slightly. She lifted her head, her eyes snapped directly to mine. As if she'd been expecting that exact moment. My breath caught. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. She didn't move. She just looked at me, with a strange, almost tender seriousness. Then she turned, and walked toward the cliff path. The narrow trail that hugged the coastline and disappeared behind a ridge. For a moment, I stood frozen. Then I went back inside and shook my friend's shoulder. Wake up, I whispered. She's here. He sat up, groggy. Who? Helena. He blinked. What do you mean here? She was outside. She walked toward the path. He rubbed his face. And why exactly are we following a stranger on an island we didn't plan to visit? I grabbed my shoes, because everything about this trip feels like it's leading somewhere. And she's one of the reasons. He exhaled sharply but didn't argue. He'd felt it too, the pull. The quiet sense of purpose the island radiated. The trail began behind Sophia's guest house, cutting between olive trees and old stone walls covered in moss. The air smelled of sage and wild thyme. We walked in silence for a while. The sound of our footsteps blending with the distant crash of waves below. The path eventually widened, opening onto a breathtaking view. The Aegean stretching endlessly. The village behind us shrinking into a cluster of white dots. Then we saw her. Helena stood at the overlook, arms crossed, staring at the water as if it contained a message only she could read. She didn't turn when we approached. She just said, quietly, "You came." It wasn't a question. It was a certainty. "We saw you," I said. "You were outside the guest house." She nodded. I wanted to see if you were awake. "Why?" my friend asked. Helena finally turned to face us. "Because today," she said softly, "you'll understand why you ended up here." My stomach tightened. How could you possibly know that? I asked. A long pause, then she said, "Some islands pull people in when it's time for them to hear something they've avoided. Karpathos is one of those islands." My friend frowned. "Hear what?" Helena looked at me, only at me. "You came here for something unfinished." A heavy silence dropped between us. I swallowed. "I don't know what you mean." She tilted her head, studying me. don't you?" Her voice wasn't accusatory, it was gentle. Like a hand resting on a wound you didn't realize was still open. She stepped aside, revealing a small stone bench overlooking the sea. "Set," she said. "Both of you." "We did." Helena stayed standing, the wind tugging at her hair. Then she said something that made my heart kick against my ribs. "You weren't meant to go to Naxos yesterday, you were meant to come here. Because Karpathos is where you'll hear the truth you've been avoiding for a long time." I swallowed hard. "What truth?" She held my gaze. "The one that followed you onto the ferry." Helena let the silence stretch, not uncomfortably, but in a way that felt intentional, as if she needed the island itself to listen before she spoke. The wind lifted, carrying the scent of salt and wild herbs across the cliff. Below us, waves pushed against the rocks with slow, heavy breaths. "Finally," she said, "the truth that followed you here isn't about me. It's not about the ferry. It's not even about this island." Her eyes softened. "It's about the person you've been running from." I felt my throat tighten. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My friend exhaled sharply beside me, the kind of exhale that says I've been waiting for you to face this. Helena sat on the stone bench next to us. Not too close, just close enough. "You've been carrying something for a long time," she said. "An apology you never said, a conversation you never had, a loss you never let yourself grieve." My hands trembled in my lap. She continued, gently. "You think travel is escape, but sometimes it takes you exactly where you need to stop running." I stared at the horizon, my vision blurring. For years, I'd moved from place to place, country to country, island to island, never staying long enough to face what felt too heavy, too sharp, too real. The person I'd hurt, the one I'd left without explanation, the message I'd never sent, the closure I'd denied both of us. It all rose to the surface like something I'd been holding underwater for too long. Helena's voice softened further. "Karpathos has a way of bringing people to themselves. You didn't get on the wrong ferry. You got on the ferry that finally stopped pretending." I wiped my eyes. "So what do I do now?" She smiled, not smugly, not mysteriously, just kindly. "You start by calling the person you've been trying to forget. Not to fix the past, but to free the part of you still living in it." My friend put a hand on my shoulder. "She's right," he whispered. Helena stood. The wind swept her hair across her face, and for a moment, she looked both younger and older than she had a second before. "One more thing," she said. "You didn't come here alone. Someone wanted you to stop suffering in silence." I looked up at her. "Who?" She nodded toward my friend. "He did." My friend blinked, startled. "I didn't." "Yes," Helena said simply. "You did. You brought him here because you knew he wouldn't choose to stop running unless someone made him." Then she stepped back from the overlook. "That's all I needed to tell you." We watched her walk toward the path again, her small figure blending into the white and blue of the island houses. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. We sat on the balcony of Sophia's guest house, the sun melting into the sea in long orange ribbons. My phone lay in my hand. I had dialed the number 100 times before, but never pressed call. My friend nudged me gently. "You don't have to fix everything," he said. "You just have to stop carrying it alone." I closed my eyes, then I pressed the button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a familiar voice, a voice I had been avoiding for years, answered quietly. "Hello." My chest cracked open. "Hey," I whispered. "It's me. I'm somewhere unexpected. And I think it's time we talked." There was a long, soft silence. Then, "Yeah," the voice said. "I think so too." 2 days later, we boarded the ferry off Karpathos. The right ferry this time, but I kept thinking about the wrong one. How it had led us to Sophia, to Helena, to a cliff overlooking a sea that had reflected exactly who I'd become. Travel doesn't always show you the world. Sometimes it shows you yourself. And sometimes it takes the wrong ferry to get to the right truth.